Hi, I'm John Billman. I'm 75 next month, end of this month, and I've been a type 1 for 40 years. I have an identical twin brother who was diagnosed when he was 23, so he's had diabetes for, 52 years. Our father was diabetic. He was diagnosed when he was in his 40s, and his mother, my grandmother, was a diabetic, a type 1, and she was diagnosed probably in the 20s because they invented or discovered insulin in 1921, I think it was. So she was lucky. I guess we were lucky that she had insulin, although she might have had my father before she was diagnosed. But anyway, she used to boil glass syringes and needles. Needles look like nails about that big to inject insulin in. I was young at the time. I don't remember too much about it. I do remember though that she was very volatile, and I think it's probably because she went low and she just got angry easily. But anyway, my father would test blood sugar. So when he was 40, that was probably in the early 1950s. He would use test strips, but it was a urine analysis, and of course that was a delay of what was really happening to him. When I was diagnosed, I'm pretty sure there was no tester at that time. Shortly after I was diagnosed, there was a tester, and that was a big deal to be able to test your blood sugar. And I would take, from my grandmother, it was just the first form of insulin, which was regular insulin, and it was pig insulin. I think it was pig.
Yeah.
And for my father, they started coming out with the NPH, which was a longer acting, and his blood sugar used to jump all over the place. But he lived to be 80. My grandmother was in her early 70s when she died. My brother and I are both 75, so we're doing pretty well with a long history of diabetes because of primarily because of the changes and the advances. I went on a pump about 25 years ago, and it's been great. And then the biggest change, I think, is the CGM, which allows me to check my blood sugar constantly. In fact, sometimes I may even obsess over it, which is probably not that good. One funny incident, I was at my brother's house, and we drove out. He lived in New York. We drove out to New Jersey through all that crummy traffic, and we were at least an hour from his house, and I realized I left my pump back at his house. And I said, oh, what are we going to do? We're going to drive all the way back because we were going to meet somebody for dinner. And I said, let me use your pump. So he disconnected. He didn't want to do this because it screwed up his numbers, but I talked him into it. He disconnected his pump. I connected it to me, and he gave me I got a couple of units of insulin, and we kept doing that all night, and I was absolutely fine. So it's good having a twin with diabetes.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things Andy and I have experienced, where we've gone out to dinner and realized we left one of their pumps at home after they took a bath.
So you could.
And at the time they had the same pump, so we would just connect the other one. One of the benefits of having siblings.
Now, the problem is the bolus wizard doesn't work anymore, right?
No,
because it's
you just guess.
Yeah, just guess. That's about it. I'm on Medicare. Medicare covers everything really well. And I'm waiting now for Medicare to approve the Medtronic pump and sensor, which is not a complete closed loop, but it's a pretty good system.
What do you mean? So can you explain what you mean by closed loop system and how that's different from what we have now?
Well, what I have now, I have the Dexcom CGM, which doesn't talk at all to my pump. So. And
your Dexcom is what measures your blood sugar.
That's right. I'm sorry. It's a continuous glucose monitor, CGM. And I measure my blood sugar, and then I, depending on what the blood sugar is, I put the numbers into the pump, and the pump will calculate how much insulin to give me, or and so on. If I'm low, then I need to know to decide how much to eat, and that kind of thing. With the Medtronic system, the sensors talk directly to the pump, and from what I understand, it almost totally eliminates low blood sugars. And I don't know the whole thing about it, but that's probably one of the biggest. Lows are probably the most dangerous thing about diabetes now, especially as you get older. You fall and it's tough. But anyway, it's all up to Medicare. Medicare hasn't approved it, but according to my doctor, it's around the corner.
Is there anything that you would say has changed other than the technology, but just like being able to control your blood sugar from when you were 35 to now?
It's primarily the technology and the type of insulin. When I started, I would give myself, I forget, but I think I just gave myself a one shot in the morning of just NPH mixed with some regular, and then maybe some NPH at night. So
Yeah.
I'd load up the insulin, and if I didn't eat at the right time or I exercised too much, there's nothing I could do. My body had a ton of insulin, and I had and then I couldn't test as easily either. You just react to how you feel. So I mean, the technology has really changed it. It's made it's so much better and easier.
Yeah, I mean, I know even when my first daughter was diagnosed, and this was in 2013 or 2012, they put her on NPH and regular, which is the 2 shots a day. And, you know, after reading all the studies, that's an old regimen they don't even use anymore because there is long-term higher risk health effects if you're on that kind of regimen. And it was a huge struggle to manage an 18-month-old's blood sugars with that kind of regimen, and eventually we switched to a place that was more proactive and put my daughter on the pump, and that was huge for us.
That was 2012?
That was 2012. I don't even know why they would even consider that anymore, since there's been so many new advances and studies that have shown even multiple injections is better than the 2 shots a day, the NPH and regular. So, yeah. Anything else you'd want to say? Like anyone who's newly diagnosed, any advice for them?
It gets better, I'll put it that way. I remember the first time I was in the doctor's office, and I knew I had it, by the way, and it was Halloween, like the other woman, and I love Reese's peanut butter cups, and I had a whole bunch of them to give out to kids, and I was going to eat some myself, but then I find out I'm diabetic and I can't eat any. I find I could still eat some, but I was in the doctor's office, and I had to take a shot for the first time, and I was concerned. I was scared, and I remember I don't think I had even had insulin in it. It was just a practice, and I jabbed myself in the arm. I reacted, pulled back, and jabbed it again. And but it turns out you get so used to it, it's nothing. And the needles, by the way, are also much thinner and less feeling when you inject.
Yeah.
As you know, you do it with your twins. Even if they've gotten used to it, I bet, right? And the finger sticking, that's nothing too. You build up calluses, you don't even feel it.
Yeah.
So I think that's the people when I've told people I'm diabetic, oh, you have to take needles. That's by far it's a nothing. I think one of the most uncomfortable things about diabetes is when you go low.
Yeah. What does it feel like?
I think it feels like you're crazy, like you're. I mean, at times I think I'm on Mars. I mean, it just the thoughts that go through your head is like you're in a different dimension. And at times it can be kind of funny afterwards, but other times it's a paranoia, an anxiety that's just very uncomfortable. Fortunately, some orange juice and you're back to normal in 15 minutes.
I was going to ask you, how did you know you had type 1 diabetes? Because you said you already knew that. I mean, I know you had family history of it, so you're probably on the lookout for it. But was there any signs that you had that?
Yeah. Oh, 2 things. My brother and I both had some months before we became diabetic. we had very strong backaches, very painful backaches. Couldn't sleep at night. I actually had to sleep in a chair. And I think that was it's an autoimmune disease, and I think my body was attacking the pancreas, and and that's what I felt. But the symptoms were tremendous thirst. I remember when my brother first became diabetic, he craved grape juice. He loved it. And of course, that's about the worst thing you could be drinking. And I was just thirsty, and then I actually got double vision. And the doctor said because there's so much sugar in my eyes, it focused wrong. And as soon as I got under control, which was within a day, I was completely back to normal again. So it was thirst, and he lost a lot of weight. I didn't lose weight because I knew it right away. It took him a few days to figure it out, even though my father and grandmother were diabetic. So.
Great. Thanks so much for sharing that.
You're welcome. I thank you for letting me.
Yeah.